Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're going to be watching this video slide presentation. So, welcome to the Cisco Networking Academy IT Essentials Modules 10. So, we've gone through Module 1, Module 2, Module 3, Module 4, up till Module 9. A very interesting series. And everyone here, I'm sure you have access to the LMS. So, make sure you take your notes. This is a very short module. It's about Windows installation. Most of the guides you have on your own LMS, so I will just go through it. If there's anything I need to point out, I'll point that out. If you have questions, please don't forget to ask on the mentorship group. Okay, so it starts somewhere. All these are pre-class content, so it starts here. So modern operating system. So there are several operating systems. So we're going to go back a little bit in time, history. Then I want to see the functions of an operating system. And for every operating system, they all have their minimum hardware requirements. If you need to upgrade your operating system, what do you need to do? If you need to create partitions, like in your house, you have rooms. So you could create isolated partitions within your hard disks, and your Windows have the disk management utility. So we also go through how do you do your installation. Modern operating systems. So you could have multi-user. Like this system I'm using have two users. So another thing when it comes to operating system is you could have multitasking. That's to say that you could have multiple applications at the same time. Like I'm running a recording software and I'm using the the slide software, right? I can have something on the background running. So that's multitasking. Then multiprocessing. Most operating systems we have more than one processor, like we've seen when we're looking at hardware components. Then multi-threading allows different parts of the program to run at the same time. Those are concepts you need to understand. Basic functions of operating system, that's what manages all the applications and the hardware. It serves as the bridge between the application and the hardware. So you cannot have a recording software, you cannot have something like Chrome, for instance, without the operating system, right? And Chrome will need your hardware, your camera at times if you need to do conferencing. So the point is that that operating system serves as that bridge. It helps to create the structure for the hard disks and several other functions we have for an operating system. So you have the Windows, of course, there are earlier versions before 7. Like I used to use the 98, Windows 98. It was more or less a legacy system from 95. Rather legacy a newer version from 95. From there, I think we now had we had 2000 before XP, then we now have Visa. It is actually a it's an awesome journey all through. When I used Windows 98, I used Windows ME, what looks like 2000. Then 2000, that's the Millennium Edition, that's the ME 2000, and you now have after 2000 you now have, I think that's when you now have XP. 2000 was one of my best operating systems, very rugged, a little bit more secured, not so vulnerable compared to XP and 7. 7 are very 7 is very, and it lasted for a very long time. Of course, that's one thing you get when you have an operating system, and it integrated a whole lot of newer features, right? So you started having a little bit of security from Windows 8. Vista did not last, I guess, 3 years, 4 years. I used to use Vista. Vista did not last so well. It was more or less a bogus operating system. You now had a Windows 8 that was very unsuccessful. That's what now. This was the point. This was the time when Windows was trying to, or rather, Microsoft was trying to. They started producing phones. That was when they bought Nokia. They started producing phones, so they wanted to make sure that across board. Their tablets, their mobile phones, their PCs all look alike. So it introduced the Metro tiles, right? Unifies the Windows look and feel on desktop, laptop, mobile phones, and tablets. Yes, this was a very nice experience, but it was not so welcomed. So within 8.1, still people didn't love it. We now had 10, and we're still using 10. I think we have Windows 11 now. So 10 was a little bit lighter, a better version of Windows 8. So if I'm to choose amongst all of these versions from the Windows 98 I've used, of course, Windows 98, imagine when you have to do installations on the Windows 98 system, you have to put in your floppy, you connect, you copy, you access the floppy, you copy the files from when you had just 2 gig or 4 gig, 8 gig hard disks, very small hard disks, but they were large in their sense at that time. So you have to CD into that's change directory into the floppy disk, copy the files, and put it into the hard disk. Then it runs off the hard disk over time. I think from Windows 2000, we started using CDs to do installations. I think even from Windows 7 or so and Vista, we're able to even use a bootable hard disk or a bootable pen drive, that's a flash drive, to do your installation. It became a little bit much easier compared to the older versions. Okay, so this is Windows, Ubuntu, OS, that is X, that's Macintosh, these are our preferred operating systems. So these are some of their minimum requirements. For any operating system you want to install, you must make sure that it meets a particular minimum requirement. For instance, you have Windows 10, Windows 8.1. If you need to run Windows 10, it then means you need 1 gigahertz or faster. RAM, this is what you need. Hard disk space, this is what you need. Graphics card, your display, right? So you see in Windows 10, they made sure that they went back a little bit, uh, being compatible with lower what you don't have here. See, you have so many graphics issues when it comes to Windows 8 because your older legacy devices are not able to. We have driver issues. We will not be able to feed project to those devices because it needs a higher resolution. Okay, architecture, yeah. So you have different bits of operating system. Like if you check your do Windows E on your system, you're going to see what your configuration looks like. So you might be running a 32-bit operating system, or you might also be running a 64-bit. And there's a downside with running the 32-bit processor. So you cannot do more than 4 gig. So even if you have 8 gig RAM installed on your 32-bit operating system, you use only 4 gig, right? But for a 64 bits, I think you could use as much as 120 something gig RAM even. So it makes it possible to use higher RAMs. You have faster processor, and the beauty about 64-bit is that it's backward compatible with a 2-bit processor. That's why you could install a software that is a 2-bit and a software that is 64-bit on a 64-bit system. So, but you cannot install the 64-bit system or rather software on the 32-bit operating system. No, you cannot. Yes, compatibility. Make sure you check this from time to time for whether it's your driver. Look like what I was talking about. You must make sure that it's compatible with the operating system. Even when you're installing a driver, a software, you must check out for the operating system. For instance, you cannot install a software that is meant for only Windows 10 on a higher Windows 10 operating system. No, there are some softwares that are backward compatible, so they work for Windows 7, 8, 10. Some software just work for only Windows 10, so you have to make sure that you check for those compatibility. Same thing for upgrades. You could do upgrades. Just go to your menu, tap on upgrade. You see all of the menu. You could hit a button and you're next to. If you are doing your upgrade, make sure that your power is connected. Make sure you're connected to the internet. and allow your system is going to go through the process. And once when you do your upgrade, you don't make sure that your drivers, your hardware is compatible with the new operating system. Very critical, because your driver might not work, or you might have to now be doing you forcing driver installation, which is not actually good practice. Data migration, make sure you copy all of your files. For you to install Windows, you could use a hard disk, you could use solid state drive, you could use a flash drive. Most of these, you could have a small tool, a software that can make them bootable. Just Google bootable, make hard flash drive bootable. Once you do that, you could put the operating system into the flash drive, and once you fixing the pen drive or any of this on your operating system, you're able to boot from them. Because by default, you cannot boot from any of these devices except uh, they are made bootable. And one of the ways you could make them bootable is also to enter into your BIOS. Depending on your system, go to F2 or F10 while your system is booting up, you're able to get into BIOS. You will see that property that helps you to select what options do you want to be able to boot when you start up. So by default, most systems is the hard disks that have that number one priority to boot. So some PCs, floppy, flash drives, that's external flash drives, external hard disks, CD-ROMs are all disabled. So you need to get into BIOS and activate them. You could look that up. It's a very straightforward process. I think we have that down in the line. Hard drive partitioning. So where you need to divide, partition your hard disks. Of course, you're going to be dealing with several file systems. It can be FATs or FAT32 or NTFS. So partitions and logical drives. So don't always forget that your C drive or your primary drive is going to contain the OS, and which is always the first partition. That's where your system is going to boot up from. So every other partition you have is going to be secondary. So you could store files there and the rest. So there are different file systems. So this is older, followed by this newer, 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 right? So the very old, so most flash drives, and it can tell how much maximum they can support. 2 terabytes, right? But see NTFS, little bit more recent, can support up to this. You see this FAT64, this FAT3264 can support 4 gig, right? So these are different files. This is for CD most times, depending on the type of CD. Previously, we looked at PC components. We looked at the Blu-ray discs, the CD, the DVD, the DVD writable, and we looked at all of their sizes. So this is dependent on what type of drive. Okay, there's a video demonstration of how to do disk partitioning. Please get your LMS, play this video. You could test it out. Take your notes. If you have questions, please don't forget to ask on the group, and I'm going to be giving you a reply. Same thing for multi-boot procedure. So there's a lab there. We're going to do that all at the end of the day after the course of the course. Installation and boot sequence. Yes, like I said earlier on, what device do you want to boot up first when you switch on your PC? Is it your CD-ROM? Is it your flash drive? Is it your hard disk? So you have to get into BIOS and activate that and select that, right? Once you select, that will now tell the PC what to boot up first. Account creation. For Windows, I think since Windows 10 or Windows 8, we now have option of signing in with our Microsoft account. And you have different types of user. You have the admin user. You also have the standard user. You also have the guest user. All of them have their different capabilities. You don't want to make somebody an admin user if you don't want him to have full control of the PC. An admin user will be able to create other users, but the standard user and the guest user will not be able to do a lot of things. You're able to do some driver installation, do some uh, power user based configurations on your PC. So if you want to be able to do that, you could use the administrator type of account. So when you're creating an account, you just go to Windows, tap here, create user account. It will bring you here, tap, you could create a new account, put it here. You can say, okay, once you do that, you can now have a different user. That user is going to have its own, can have its own softwares, can have its own interface, can have its own screensaver. It's like two houses or two rooms in one house. That's the reasons why you could have create users. For installation, you might want to do updates, right? But you need to be sure that your update is compatible with your hardware. So update is not just what you want to do every now and then, because yes, they're going to contain some security patches, but you have to be careful. You have to hold on and make sure that that particular update has been tested thoroughly, because you could do an update and your system stops working. You could do an update and your driver stops working, your screen stops. You could do an update and your keyboard stops working. You could do an update and something bad is going to happen because of compatibility issues. So make sure that most of the updates you're trying to activate, that your hardware is compatible for that. Disk cloning, yes, you could use some tools to do disk cloning to exactly clone a disk. Separation system separation tool. You could also use several free applications and also paid applications to do the same function. All you just need to do is that activate the software, indicate which disk you want to duplicate. That's to say that that disk should be already on that system, either a flash drive, a hard disk, a CD-ROM. Then you're saying you want to duplicate. Okay, other installation method, it could be over the network, it could be via an image, or it can just be a custom installation. So this over the network. This also over the network. So you have a video explanation. Please go through this, your LMS, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to hear from you. Recovery partition, yes. If you get a new system, there will be a partition that you could fall back to in case there's a compromise on your system, or in case you've tried all you can and you cannot get back your operating system. So what this does is that it takes your system back to something that looks like the factory setting, the same way you bought your system. So it's good to have backup from time to time. But if you cannot still boot up to your system, most of the time they're going to have a partition which is called the recovery partition. Right? This partition called recovery partition contains an image that can be used to restore the computer to its original configuration, invariably factory setting. Right? You also want to try system restore. System restore is another nice utility. So that takes you back to an earlier date. So, but you lose configurations and settings, while your files are intact. So that's so I'll just make this a little bit smaller as a side note. Okay. So that's one solution you could explore before you now try, because this is going to, if you don't have backup, this is going to, but this will just, like, if your system is not working properly, you could get it to safe mode and take your system to an earlier date that was working. Of course, in place upgrade. So you could do an upgrade in such a way that you still retain your previous operating system, maybe that had issue. With that, you're able to still get up your files. But for a clean install, it's all fresh. That's what I was talking about, boot sequence. So get into maybe F2 or F10, get into your system BIOS, then you could navigate boot, then you can now sort this. See, look at these arrows, they tell you a guide. If you use the up and down arrow on your keyboard, it will move this thing up and down. So if you put it first, that means it's going to boot from CD first, followed by your SATA hard disks, followed by, depending on what and the other things that you have. Okay, for Windows 7, there's what we call safe mode. So safe mode is diagnostics mode. I talked about it just a minute ago. So these are options. I used to like the last known good configuration. The system is not coming up, right? And there must be a configuration, there must be a setting that was working before. So you could start up your system, come to this place, now use your arrow keys, get to this place, hit enter. It's going to take your system to your last known good configuration, and your system can be back in shape. For Windows 8 and Windows 10, for you to debug a PC that have issue booting up, this is the kind of menu you have. But for Windows 7, this is the kind of menu you have. For Windows 8 and 10, this is the kind of thing you have. So you could try any of this. One is going to help fix your issue. Okay, that's all for module 10. That's a very long haul. So we talked about operating system, disk management. These are some of the new words that we learned. Okay, thank you very much for going through this class. I'll see you in module 10.